as we know from Albers, black, white, and gray are color. And in my practice, there's no need for other color, as people generally think about it. And I would also throw in here, it has nothing to do with Albers, but I think it's a kind of truth if we're after precision and the mark. I once heard Billy Whitelaw say, she was recounting being directed by Samuel Beckett, and if she should act too much, he would say, "Too much color, Billy, too much color." So what I do is quite simply make that mark, and I will use a graphite stick. It's on white. There certainly is black, white, and gray. That's plenty color for me. I have these counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and each line is drawn in obedience to, in accordance to, the length of the count as I'm hearing it, and when the numbers stop, the line will stop. It's not so much a visual thing as a felt, intuitive, oral thing, actually. And I have learned to absolutely trust the time of the line rather than the look of it. And that'll always get me in the right spot. There is always a rhythm, it's breathing, it's orchestration. Well, I graduated from high school, of course, and because art had always been my strong suit. Again, my father, a great intellectual, so each of his 3 girls sort of pursued or went to university where they could best pursue what it is they were good at. So I had looked around and realized with research that the art department at Skidmore was a very, very good art department. And I applied there and I got in. I only realized later from my then professor, Bob Reed, that it was the best art department on the East Coast at the time. One of those where Albers' basic drawing, basic design had found its way from Yale. And that's my crucial training. And that kind of clarity, the way of constructing, and a very basic way of building, horizontals and verticals. Nothing, of course, could be more classical. So now we have it being incarnated again in the Bauhaus system with, as we know, many, many different forms. Painting, drawing, architecture, all of those ways of building. And Josef Albers was one of the primary teachers, and he came up with a way of teaching, a program: basic drawing, basic design, and color. So crucially then, when the war broke out, he went to Black Mountain and set up Black Mountain, and other teachers came over to work with him. That system came with him. And then after the war, he took that system to Yale. And that has had the most extraordinary impact on many of the great, great artists of my generation, perhaps even a little bit older. One of the crucial factors in basic drawing was that you would choose an object, and you would draw that object over months, again and again, to really get it, to nail it, to put it into space. And just to show you how fundamental that choice can appear all those years later. I remember talking with Richard Serra. He pulled out his piece of graphite stick. Yes, the same one I use. I said, "And what was your object, Richard?" And he said, "A garbage can." And he's been making garbage cans ever since, and mine was a pineapple. And I've been really drawing that pineapple ever since. I arrived at Skidmore then, ready to learn, as it were, and I went to my first art class. Bob Reed walked in. "Okay, all you high school hotshots, now let's see what you can do." And he wanted to know where everyone was from, anyway. And when I told him I was from Minneapolis, he said, oh boy, because he had been in Minneapolis working, teaching at the University of Minnesota, and as fate would have it, the senior partner in my father's law firm had bought a drawing by Robert Reed, and it sat in the law practice of my father. And so from the very beginning, we had kind of a special bond, if you will. And he was rigorous beyond belief, but that was just absolutely essential for me, and I loved it. I responded to his rigor, and he was teaching the basic drawing, the basic design and color, whereas one also had other teachers there, painting and so on, and none of those had any impact on me whatsoever. Many people are fascinated by the fact that I am left-handed. I write with my left hand, but I draw right-handed. Everyone says it's counterintuitive. In fact, it's nothing if not intuitive for me. The fact that at Skidmore, Bob Reed, our professor, insisted that we use our other hand so as to unlearn all that we high school hotshots knew. For me to draw with my other hand was second nature. So much so that he said, "Okay, Joseph," that was my maiden name, "Okay, Joseph, so use your right foot." That I could do too. And that then gets me to, I think, the real point here. It wasn't a question of being taught or untaught anything. It's that the basic number, rhythm, structure in my body quite simply needs to come through the right side of my body, whether I'm using my right hand or indeed my right foot. It's freed up that way. So while quite a lot has been said about the Albers basic drawing, basic design idea to use the other hand, once again, it's something that quite simply suited me, matched me. I learned two crucial things, and I've mentioned this to you, they're with me in the studio every day. Cross those corners, and I would say, because you know my work, or not. The point is that it is a decision that one takes. Either you cross them or you don't, but it's not by chance. And he would say, "I don't want the drawing to fall apart when I get up close." You were either taught to choreograph the page or orchestrate the page. And what could be possibly be more relevant to me than that? I don't think he could have understood just how much I enact that, but I do remember when he came down to my studio in New York in 1992, he came down from Yale. He was, as he would say, knocked out by the fact that I'm turning the sheet round like that. I was just beginning. He was absolutely knocked out by that. My body will intuitively take on balletic postures and movements. For example, to step into arabesque, even to open my stance as the line needed to be longer, so that my body would be graceful. In fact, it was a photograph of myself in 2004 where I noted that the body was not graceful enough because I was too fixed in my posture. And so I opened the stance, and that gave me more swing. As after time, I found again wanting more reach in the longer line, I needed to lift that left leg, or I didn't need to, the left leg just lifted of its own, of necessity. And then I noted that that is what the body will do naturally for the long line. But for the shorter line, the half line, for example, coming from the center point, the body, my body, wanted to be very much lifted, but I found my feet were naturally taking on a third or fourth position so as to be graceful. I don't know anyone who makes work that looks like mine with that intention. It may look like mine if it is geometry, but it is not drawn through the body. I have no choice but to move, just as Plato tells us. What of the habit of the soul? It's in motion. And if Beckett couldn't be silent, I cannot be still. And that's how it is.